This is a brief overview of what we'll be talking about: the principle of effective academic goal setting and the practices and habits of academic high achievers. Before we start, like I said, it will be good to know a brief about me. My name is Eberechukwu Ihemezie. Currently, I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Agricultural Economics in the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. I am also currently, of course, I'm on a leave, working as a postdoctoral fellow at, initially I was at Eberechukwu University, but currently now I'm at Imperial University, Imperial College in London. My academic background, so I had my bachelor's degree in agricultural economics from UNN, where I graduated with a first class. I guess that's what qualifies me to make this kind of presentation, because most of the principles and practices I'll be sharing with you are things I learned from myself, because I mean, if I look at my academic trajectory from secondary school or from primary school, I haven't been an excellent student. There was a time, of course, I'll tell you a little bit about myself during the presentation. But my first at the university level, my first degree was in agricultural economics in UNN. I finished with a first class. I traveled to UK on a Commonwealth Scholarship for my master's at the University of Leeds. I did my master's in environment and development. Again, I finished with a distinction because, of course, it's principle. Principles apply anywhere and everywhere in the world. Methods might change. As you can see during the course of this presentation, you will see some of the principles that we'll be sharing with you. The methods I use may not work exactly the same way it worked for me, for you, right? But the principles remain the same. The most important thing is to stick to the principles and apply the methods as it suits you. So again, after my master's in Leeds, I briefly returned to Nsukka, where I was teaching at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. But again, I traveled in 2019 again to the UK in Leeds for my PhD in environmental economics. I completed my PhD in 2023. I got a postdoctoral fellowship at Eberechukwu University. I completed that fellowship in December last year, and January this year, I started a new position at Imperial College at the Center for Environmental Policy in London. Most of my research work revolves around economic valuation of nature and ecosystem services. This is basically some of the things I do, but I won't go into my research at this point. So some of the current projects I do is understanding nature's multiple values for integration into economic decisions. So if you put my name on Google Scholar, you will see some of my works and some of the things I've been doing. This is a brief about me. But like I said, some of the experiences I'll be sharing here will come from personal experiences or things that I've experienced in the course of my academic journey. Feel free to put down your questions, and then we will address it towards the end. Okay, so to start, the topic says understanding the academic system. So what is the academic system? The first thing I always like to say whenever I talk to students about this is for students to understand that academics is a system. A system is a set of principles or procedures, according to which things or something is done or things are done, So what this means is that academics as a system has standards. It means it has rules and principles that you must follow in order to succeed. And the surprising thing is that as standards and system is a respect of no person. It applies to everyone, irrespective of whether it works, irrespective of whether you believe it or you don't believe it, or irrespective of whether you understand it or you don't understand it. There's this saying that experience is the best teacher, but I always tell people experience is definitely a good teacher, but maybe not the best teacher, because for me, I think wisdom is the best teacher. And wisdom demands that you learn from the experience of others. The short time that you will spend in the university is too small for you to make all the mistakes. And one thing with academic system is, it's once you make any mistake, it punishes you. It reflects. If you have an F in your first year, if you back Fs in your first year, and then in second year you start improving, when they are calculating your CGPA, they are not going to cut off first year because you started improving in second year. The impact of the result in first year is going to affect your final grade or whatever you will graduate with. So you don't have to wait to you learn by mistake, by trial and error. Of course, many of us don't even have the opportunity to learn some of these principles that we'll be sharing with you in the course of this academic reading series. But yeah, we are lucky enough to be able to um, stumble upon them and put them into practice. So I believe that if you put the same principles into practice in your own academic journey, you will get the same results that most of us who practice these things got. So as an academics as a system means that success in academics is not random, it's systemic, and it is only students who understand how the system works will perform far better than those who rely only on their efforts. I'm very sure most of you here are university students. If you look back in secondary school from your experiences, you realize that most students that make the best grade most times are not the most intelligent students. And of course, I use myself as an example. I tell people I am not a very intelligent person. That I know personally, because if I look at, say, my class in the university, my first degree, I can count up to 5 to 6 people. I am very convinced that they are far better than me in terms of being intelligent, But I got better results than them, So what does this mean? Academic success is not solely a function of brilliance. It's not solely a function of effort. It's more about understanding the academic system and how it applies to you. And that is basically what we're going to share in the course of this presentation. And I hope you will find it very useful. So, how does the academic system reward students? So if you understand that academics is a system, it means there are procedures, there are standards in which things are done. So how does it reward those? How does it separate those who are good students and those who are bad students? The first thing is to understand that the academic system rewards consistency over intensity. You will know that at the beginning of every semester, at the beginning of every section, and this is generally even when we got admission in our first year, of course, every person will want to finish with the first class. At the beginning of every semester, you will see so many students start going for night class. You will see many students being very serious, less distraction, more focus on their academics. The intensity at the beginning of the section is always so high, but as the semester goes, the intensity begins to drop. So many other distractions begin to come along the way. But those who maintain a consistent habit from the beginning of the semester to the end, from the beginning of the section to the end of the session to the end, are those that will get the kind of results that they are looking for. So the system rewards consistency over intensity. So it's not about doing a crash program. Some people only get serious at the beginning of the semester or towards the end of the semester when it's time to write exams. So that intensity won't get you the kind of sustainable results you're looking for. Consistency in practicing some of the principles we will share with you today is what matters more than intensity. The next thing that the university system rewards is structured preparation over last-minute effort. And again, before in the course of this series, we will share with you practical tips in how to, prepare for exams, in how to read and understand, in how to be a better student and get better grades from your exams. The third one is application and clarity over memorization. The system rewards people who have a clear, of course, I'm a lecturer, I grade students, and one of the things when we know we know students, when we mark scripts, we know students who simply memorize. And there are certain questions we put to students, and you know that this one doesn't really understand the concept. It's just memorization. I mean, memorization is not bad. Of course, the Nigerian academic system mostly rewards that. But for those, if there's anybody here that have studied abroad, where critical thinking is important, you will understand that you will be a below average student if you rely solely on memorization, rather than critical thinking and application, a clarity of understanding and application of the concept that you're studying. The next thing that the system rewards is strategic prioritization and time allocation. I'll give you a practical example. If you're starting a semester and you're taking, say, 7 modules in that semester, the fact is that not all the modules have the same strengths and weaknesses. Not all this. There are modules that are easier than others. There are modules or subjects that are more difficult than others. It's important for a student and again, we have individual strengths and weaknesses, right? So if you're someone who has a strength in, say, quantitative analysis, in calculation and all that, and there are modules you're taking in a semester that requires that, and that is your area of strength, it should probably be easier for you, to go through those modules, apply the principles we will share here, and then you pass them. But if you don't have strength in quantitative studies or in calculation, mathematics, and all that, you need to prioritize those modules or those subjects and put more attention on them, put more time in understanding them than other. So strategic prioritization is very, very important, and allocating the time you will spend. For example, when we're at the university, some of the easiest courses for me to pass were the general or the GS courses. They were very general, for me. The textbooks are there, so what of things I normally do is attend lectures, understand where the lecturers are going, then get the textbooks, summarize what is in the textbook. I always have my own personal notes. I will share that later on. And then I drop it during the exam. It's easy for me. Instead of reading the general textbook everybody's reading, I am what I use to prepare for exam is my own personal notebook, that I summarized throughout the course of the semester, but that's for the subjects where I find it a little bit easy. There are subjects that are more difficult for me to grab the concept. I spend more time on those ones. I try to engage the service. Of course, there are so many things I will share with you in the course. This is just a summary. I engage the services of my classmates who understand those topics or those subjects better. I spend more time on those subjects more than I spend on the ones that I find a little bit easier. So strategic prioritization, know what the subject you will prioritize. This does not mean that some modules or subjects are less important. It just means that your personal strengths and weaknesses aligns with certain subjects, and you will need to rearrange yourself in order to align with them, and then allocate time appropriately. Then independent learning, and this is, again, I believe most people here are university students. As a lecturer, one thing I know is that what the lecturers will always do is introduce concepts and ideas to you and guide you through them. Most of the things you will learn that will separate you from others are done independently. If you rely solely on lecture notes or whatever you get from class, you will at best be an average student. If you want to be an exceptional A student, you must cultivate the habit of independent learning. The ability to take whatever you get from the class, go back, internalize them and make them your own, understand them. So that independent learning is key. So in summary of understanding the academic system, the academic performance is generally a function of strategy and discipline and feedback loops. Discipline is a key subject, but time will not permit us to talk about it here. But that strategy is very, very important. Okay. So let's move into the first principle of or the first principle in understanding the academic system, which is the principle of goal setting. Before we continue, I'll pause here. Do we have any question? Like I said, I don't want to talk all through. So I'll pause this here to check if there are questions. You drop on the chat box. Question. No question. So I'm putting the floor open now for any question on what you understand by what we've said so far. Any question before we carry on? Before we move into the first principle, which is what we're going to dwell on today. Okay, I will keep that for towards the end. So we'll carry on. So, like I said, the first principle we'll talk about, which is...
I think there's a question there.
Oh, okay.
I think somebody said, does this apply to master's students? And then there's another person raising, I have a question. So,
okay, let me address the question. Whether, perhaps you can help me because I'm using the web version, so it's not allowing me to see the...
no problem. I'll check it out.
Yeah, the question, and read out the questions for me. So whether the principles applies to master students, exactly. But some of the things I'm talking about at the beginning applies more to undergraduate students. Where it applies to master students, I will highlight it because at master's level, it requires more of critical thinking, critical analysis, and application. But some of the principles are general. The methods for masters, undergraduate, and masters might vary, but the principles will remain the same. The principles are basically the same. Yeah. Who, you said someone raised the hand. The floor is open and the person can share his opinion, but I can't see the person from here.
Yeah, there's no name. It's just identified as a Zoom user. So if you are the one, you indicate or you drop the question in the chat box and we'll pick it up. So Jeffy, you can continue while I sort that out.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so the first principle, which is found, and I consider this principle very foundational, is the principle of goal setting. You see, every success in life begins with a goal. And if you look at the dictionary definition of success, it defines success as the accomplishment of a goal. So what this means is that there is no success without a goal. Right? So this tells you how important a goal is. And I always use this quote in the Bible for those of us who are Christians in Esther chapter 5 verse 14, where God said, I am God. I declare the end from the beginning. And I say in advance what has not yet occurred. This is simply God setting goals and planning for the future. And this is what this Bible verse summarizes for me my understanding of goal setting as it applies to life and academics. So goal setting is generally a mental picture of that desirable future that you want. And it comes with conviction, passion, and excitement. Take note of the last part, conviction, passion, and excitement. It is, of course, I'll give us some example of the reasons why go fail, or why academics go fail. But if you have what you call a goal and you are not convinced on it, if you're not convinced of it, and whenever you remember it, you're not excited about it, because it is that conviction and excitement that will push you to do things that are not very comfortable. Because if you must attend academic success, you cannot be an average student. You cannot just be the normal student that go to class, come back, and you must be able to do some extra stuff, which I'm going to share with you. There are so many tips I'm going to share before the end of this presentation. So a goal is that mental picture of the future that comes with conviction, and is a preferable feature, is the feature that you want. So if you bring down this to academic goal, your academic goal is therefore a mental picture of the future results you want to graduate with. So let's say you're a first year student here, or you're in your second year or your third year, depending on wherever you are. Your academic goal is simply remember, it's mental. You've not seen it yet, but you must be very clear in your mind. It's a mental picture of the future results you want to graduate with. Because the truth of the matter is, it's generally said that things in life are created twice. First in the mind and then physically, right? So the physical manifestation, or the mental creation precedes the physical manifestation. So if you don't have it in your mind, if you don't picture that future or the kind of results you want to graduate with, it becomes very difficult for you to achieve your desired result. It's just like saying, if you don't know what you want, you won't. If you don't know where you're going, you won't know how to get there. That's just it. So, as a university student, your academic goal is simply your CGPA calculated in advance. This is one way I summarize it. It is how the exact result, the exact CGPA that you want to graduate with, calculating it in advance. And then, of course, it's not just an abstract goal. I want to graduate with 5 points. I want to graduate with 4.8 CGPA. No, it's beyond that. And the principle, the techniques of doing that is what we're going to talk about next. But in summary, your academic goal is that mental picture of the kind of results you want to graduate with. Okay, so what is the importance of academic goal setting? And the first importance is what I found out to be the functioning of RAS. So RAS is an acronym that stands for Reticular Activation or Activating System. Behavioral psychologists found out that there is a system in our mind, an automatic mechanism in our brain that filters important information into our attention towards the accomplishment of a goal. And that is basically what RAS, or Reticular Activation System, is. How does this apply to academic goal? I'll give you a typical example, and I've discussed this a couple of times with friends. If I ask you now, how many red Toyota vehicle or Toyota Corolla have you seen, have you come across this week? Today is Saturday. So let's say from Monday this week till today, how many red Toyota Corolla have you seen? Your answer will probably be, I don't know. You can't count the number. You can't remember. It's not. Why won't you know the answer? The answer is simple. At the beginning of this week, it was never your goal. It was never your intention. It was not in your subconscious to identify or know the number of red Toyota vehicles that you will see on the road. But if I say to you, from Monday next week, see how many red Toyota vehicles you will see wherever you're living. Say, assuming you're in Osaka, how many red Toyota vehicles. You notice that as you're walking along the road, whenever you see a red vehicle, it will cross your mind. Oh, your RAS will be activated. Oh, okay, this is number one. It begins to come to your subconscious. The reason is because you have been able to set this as a goal at the beginning of the week or before the week, that I want to identify red Toyota vehicles. The same thing applies to academics. If at the beginning of a semester, you don't have the mental picture of the kind of results you want to score for each module or for each subject, or the kind of the CGPA you want to finish the semester with, that takes me to the second point here, because they are all linked together. Opportunities will come to those with goals. What this means is that without setting out goals at the beginning, you won't be able to know the resources or the people that will help you to achieve those goals. During my undergraduate program, when I always do this at the beginning of every semester, I look at the number of courses that I'm taking that semester. Let's say in my faculty, then we normally take roughly between 7 to 8 in first semester and around 10 or 11 in second semester. And I write them down. And for each module, I look at the ones that I feel I have my skills and my natural abilities align, and I put scores. I always go for the best anyway. I'll talk about it later. For each module. And at the end I calculate the CGPA I want to finish that semester with. I didn't do this in my first year. Of course, my first year result was my worst result in the whole of my university education. It wasn't so bad, right? But of course, when I started applying these principles, I started noticing significant change. Immediately, I set my goals at the beginning of every semester. Few things began to happen. First, I began to take notice of students and resources that will help me to achieve the goal that I have set. What this means is I began to identify more brilliant students in my class. I began to identify people who have, because in every class you will see that there are people who are good in so many areas. There are good who are good in quantitative studies. There are good who are very good in qualitative studies and all that. I began to identify students who have strength in different areas that I need, and I began to befriend them. You see, no textbook passed me by, no relevant textbook passed me by. Immediately my RAS is set. No past question passed me by, because I know that these are resources I need, both human and material resources that I need in order to achieve the goal that I set at the beginning of the semester. And this is exactly what RAS does for you. Your reticular activation system can only work because of things that you have programmed at the beginning. If you don't have it clearly, if you just go into the semester without any goal, you won't even, it's just like I said before, it's like saying, it's like going to a place, saying I'm going to a place and you don't know where, you wouldn't know how to get there. So setting goal will help you to identify resources that you will need to achieve them. Because without it, your subconscious mind won't be able to pick up those signals, that will help you to achieve those things. And then lastly, setting goals gives you boldness and open doors to you. There's this kind of boldness it gives you, because you now know that this is what I want to go for. This is exactly what I am looking for. In my undergraduate days, one of the things that this did for me is I went beyond befriending friends in my class. I went to my senior colleagues who are already producing the kind of result I'm looking for, and I made them my friends. It became easier. They were the ones that always give me past questions. They are always the ones that will say, JP, this is how this lecturer behaves. This is what this lecturer wants. How was I able to identify all those human and material resources I need for my academic sources? It was simply because I was able to set a goal at the beginning. And because of the kind of goal I set, I know that there are certain resources I need to achieve them. I need in order to achieve them. So you will need to set your goal at the beginning of the semester or at the beginning of the section, and that will help you to identify all the resources and opportunities you need to achieve them. I think that's a summary of what this section is all about. Now, how do you set your academic goal? One, this is practical steps, and these are some of the things I did. Like I said, you don't have to do exactly what I did, but master the principles, and the key principles here is you have to set your goal. Calculate your results in advance, and there are 4 ways to do this. Write down all your past scores. So let's assume you're in your second year, or wherever level you are. Write down your past results or grades. Or even if you're in your first year, the results you've seen already, Then for the ones you've not seen, assume scores or grades for them. So let's assume in this semester you're taking 8 courses, and then I think we're still in first semester. You've not seen any results. So assume for all those eight courses, the kind of results you want, Set goals for all the subjects you're presently offering in a particular semester. I always recommend to set goals, set all A's. And of course, in our system in Nigeria, 70 is A. It is dangerous to set. Please, if you're not talking, try and mute yourself. It is dangerous to set your goal as scoring 70, because in my experience, one of the things I notice is those who set very high goals. For example, the minimum goal I set for every course or every module I take is 90. What it means is that if I slip away, I will fall under 80 something. Or if it becomes too hard, I fall under 70 something. But if your goal is just to simply make A, which is 70, if you encounter 1 or 2 challenges, you can slip to B, which will be meaning you're not going to achieve your goal. So now, once you've set out these results, cumulate them together, and this will give you the result of your CGPA. This result is the future result of your academic goal. That's the goal you want. Now, the next step is place it where you can always say it. And the whole idea of placing it where you can see it is you become obsessed with it. For me, during my undergraduate days, at the beginning, the reading table in my room, I write out all the courses I'm offering that semester. I paste it just on the wall beside the table where I study, and the score I want to have for each and every one of them, 80, 90 days, this. Every morning or every time I wake up, that's the first thing I see. I became obsessed with it. And it helped me because it means that when I leave the house, I'm leaving the house with a purpose in order to achieve that goal that I've set. That was the first thing I see every time and the last thing I see before I wake up. You become obsessed with it. And this last point I always say is go for the best. I think I've mentioned it. Go for the best. In setting your academic goals, it's not a time to be modest. It's a time to challenge yourself. If you think your natural ability or what you can comfortably score in this course is a B, then that's not a goal. Your goal must challenge your natural ability. Your goal must challenge your comfort. Your goal must it's not something you will achieve on a platter. It's something that will strain you. It's something that will drive you, make you to go beyond what you can normally do at your comfort. So set that best goal and then follow it. And that's the next thing we'll talk about. Goal setting and planning. So goal setting basically is all about planning, because it's one thing to set a goal, it's another thing to plan it. So what is planning? Planning is the act of setting goals and then defining the pathway to reaching them. So it's one thing to set a goal and to say, I want to score 90 in this module or in this subject, or I want to finish with a CGPA of 4.9 this semester and all that. Those are goals, but then you must have a plan. That plan defines the pathway on how you are going to reach those goals. And the process of planning and setting a goal is a process of asking questions. When you ask questions, you'll be able to, the answers to those questions is what will be able to help you to fill up the gaps, And the first question you need to ask when planning your goal is, what do I really want to do? So these are practical questions. What do I want? So what this means is that you are identifying the exact goal, the exact outcome. And like I said, a typical example is your targeted GPA, maybe 4.5, 5 points, whatever goal you think is realistic at your level, or whatever score you want to achieve for a particular subject, So you must be specific to understand. You must answer that question. What do I really want? You must be very clear. You must be able to identify that, Then the next question to ask is, how do I want to do it? This is now the process. So I have set a goal. I want to finish with a first class, which is really a vague goal. I'll talk about it later, But I want to finish with a CGPA of 4.9. Based on the analysis I have done, I've looked at my previous grades. I've looked at where I am at the moment. This is the real. For example, I started putting this into practice after my first year. So after my first year in the university, my CGPA was 4.1. Around 4.1. It wasn't up to first class because I studied agricultural and it was a 5-year course. So when I projected, I said, okay, if I have 4.1 in my first year, it means in my second year, if I have 4.8, in my third year, if I have 4.9, because I believe in progression. And in my final year, I have 5. And guess what? I'm not just telling you, this is what I did. My first year GPA was about 4.1. My second year, and I planned this at the beginning of the second semester, and it worked out exactly the way. As my first year CGPA was 4.1, my plan for second year, because second year, of course, you are still trying to understand the system as well, the goal I set for my second year CGPA was 4.7. My third year CGPA was 4.8. My fourth year GPA was 4.9. And my final year CGPA was 5 points. And I got 5 points in my final year. I did it exactly. So, but again, this was because I believe in progression. I believe that if I make a mistake, of course, the more you are into a system, the more you understand the system, the more you. So I believe in progressive not progressive planning and what you are going to achieve in your academics. So I didn't just set a goal, I'm going to make 5 points. No, I know that realistically, if I say I'm going to make 5 points in my second year, it might not be realistic, But I know that if I push myself a little bit, I'll be able to make 4.7. And if I make 4.7 in second year and make 4.8 in third year, I'm 4.9 in fourth year, and then my final year, this is the kind of CGPA I'll be able to graduate with. These were my goals from second year, and I followed it through. And by the time I graduated, it was exactly the same thing as I planned it. Of course, there were courses where I planned to score 90, but again, I found myself scoring 70 something or 80 something. But that's why I said you must aim for the highest, the best that you can get for each particular the goal you're setting for every particular module. So yeah, so after setting the goal, next is how do I want to do? What process will I use to achieve this goal? And that is where the process comes in. For example, how many hours are you willing to set out in a day in order to study? 4 hours a day, 3 hours, 2 hours, 5 hours? What is the process that will allow you to achieve that goal? And some of the things you will do in that process is not just about studying. Do you need to form study group? Study group really helped me, and I'm going to talk about it. There are so many things I'll talk about later on because this is just introductory part. Do you need a study group? Do you need to get past questions? Are there students? So that takes you back to the issue of RAS that I mentioned, the reticular activation system. The reticular, because you've set it as a goal, it helps you to map out that pathway, the process that will help you, and the resources that you need in that process to achieve the goal. Then the next question is, when do I want to start and finish? So for every goal must be time bound. So at the beginning of this semester, this is the start, this is what I want. When will this goal finish? It's at the end of the semester. So you must put a date. You must also go down apart from at the level, you must go down to the level of each subject or each course that you're taking in a semester. How much time are you spending on each course? How much time do you need in order to really grasp what this course is talking about? You must be able to set that time. Where do I want to do it? What kind of environment do I need in order to achieve this goal? If you're the type that requires, this thing requires self-understanding. And one of the principles, time will not allow us to talk about it today, but perhaps in subsequent series, we'll talk about understanding yourself, which is a very important ingredient in academic sources. You must understand yourself and know that what works for this person might not really work exactly the same way for you. Although the principle is the same, but the method will vary. So say, for instance, you're someone who likes reading in quiet places. You must set out a particular time and place where you study. The whole idea is that your brain gets wired. Your brain knows, okay, this is time to study. For example, it's just like in my normal work. At the early stage of my career, if I want to wake up, I put alarm. But now I no longer need alarm. Once is that time I normally wake up, of course, I'll wake up immediately without an alarm because my whole body system has been rewired to know that, okay, this is time. So you must be able to identify where you want to achieve, or the kind of environment you need to achieve the kind of goal you need. And this environment is not just a place, it also means your type of friends, the kind of friends you keep in school. Are they those that will help you, or those that will distract you along the way? And then next is, what do I do with it? What resources do I need in order to achieve this? You need past questions. What textbooks do you need? What type of learning method do you need? If it's a course, do I need to attend extra tutorial in order to be a better student in this particular subject? Can I study this subject alone and understand it? So that's kind of critical. The process of asking these questions, will help you in setting your goals. Now, what are the indicators of goal setting? When you have set your goals, when you have identified, you've properly set your goals and you've mapped out the pathway to achieve them, two things will become very obvious in your life. And this is what I've experienced. You will find yourself among the top people in your class. Naturally, your group of friends will change. if you're the type that your friends are the never do well in class, what we call the non-academic students, you somehow naturally you begin to shift away from them. You begin to find yourself among people that have the same similar goal with you. Again, you will also develop a positive attitude towards academics. A positive attitude here will mean that you will naturally begin to desire things that will help you to achieve that goal, irrespective of the cost that will come with it. So in practice, once your academic goal is set, you will find yourself going to classes early. You become a front seater in class. You become more active in participating in lectures. You commit to doing your assignment on time and submitting them on time. You start managing your time and yourself more effectively. So these are some of the things you will notice once your goal is set. And this is so when you say, my goal this semester is to make 5 points. My goal this semester. If you don't notice if these indicators are not very clear to you, if you're not seeing these indicators in your life, you might need to begin to question whether you're really setting a goal or you're just, dreaming, or you're just making wishes, academic wishes. Academic wishes is different from goals. Everybody will want to finish. Any student will want to finish with a first class, or at least finish with a good 2-1. Those are wishes. It's different from proper goal setting, which you've seen the process of doing it. So these indicators will be very clear to you once you've set your goals. If at the moment, if you look at your life and you're not seeing these indicators, if you can still go to class and you find yourself sitting at the back. I remember when I said I can't be comfortable sitting at the back of the class. I just feel somehow, because of course, if it's in a large lecture, you won't hear the lecturer very well, depending on the size of the class. You will be able to command the attention of the lecturer if you're sitting, somewhere around the front seat. So there are certain things. There are certain things that will naturally change in your life once your goal is very clear. And I will probably want some people to share their experiences of some of the things they noticed when they set their goal towards the end of this presentation. Okay, so what if you didn't meet up your set goal? What will happen? Of course, there are periods where you set your goals and you don't meet them. This is the time to remind yourself that every champion has a scar. Winners never quit. It's just only those that quit that never win. So let your failure, let your setback be a setup for you to come back. The key thing there is to ensure that you pick up something from the ground when you're getting up after you fall. So if your goal in this semester is to make 9 A's out of the 9 subjects you're taking, and you end up getting 8 A's, I mean, you didn't meet your goal really, but you begin to ask yourself, why? What happened? Once you begin to ask those questions and pick up the lesson, the next thing is try again, using those lessons. So you just keep trying and at the end, the whole idea is that at the end, you're getting out of the university with the best result that you can. So why do most academic goals fail? One, vague goals. Many people just set goals. I just want to graduate. I just want to pass. I just want to make an A in this course. Those goals are vague. Any goal that doesn't have a corresponding process and action matched to it is not really a goal. Again, that takes us to the second thing. Outcome focus goal. You only focus on the outcome. I want to make a first class. I want to make an A in this module and all that. That's just the outcome. Once you set a goal, the next thing that must follow it is the process. How do I achieve it? What resources do I need? What do I need? What do I commit to in order to achieve this goal? So once you ignore the process, then you're likely not going to achieve the goal. Again, another point is unrealistic workload assumptions. You need to be realistic. Like I told you, after my first semester, my first section, the first section in my undergraduate program, and I found out that my first GP was 4 points. My first CGPA was 4.1 or thereabouts. I didn't make the assumption that from second year I will make 5.5. No, I know it's not realistic. Because I know the workload. So look at yourself. Look at your situation. The situation that is more peculiar to you. And make sure that you don't you don't overload yourself with so many things that will become distractions. Another thing is no tracking mechanism. And it was the last part of this presentation. We'll look at what you need to track. No tracking mechanism. Most students don't track their academic success. So at the end of my first year, I was able to know that my CGPA was 4.1 because I was tracking everything. I was able to come, okay, if I have 4.1, it means that I started forecasting. It means if I get this, in second year, I can finish with a first class. In fact, the whole idea of finishing with a first class for me personally only came after second year, after first year, just at the beginning of second year. So because there was a tracking system, I was tracking what happens in each module. I was tracking why I made a B in this module. I was tracking why I didn't really score the kind of score. So if you put those tracking your understanding of your lecturer, your department, and all that, it will help you in order to achieve your goal. But once there is no tracking mechanism, you don't track what you score, you don't track how you submit your assignment, you don't track the things that are needed, it often leads to failure. And then the last one is no accountability system. I have a group of friends where we set these goals to. I set my goal. Of course, the goals I set are personal to me, but I share it among my friends. And then, of course, when I am not meeting up, when things become a bit difficult, those friends help you to be accountable. They put you on your feet. So you need a kind of an accountability system around you in order to help you. So you might need one or two people that you study together with, who will be able to put you through, especially during your low periods. Now, that's the principle of goal setting that we've talked about. Let us now look at the practices and habits of academic high achievers. But before we go into this, I will pause a little bit and see if anybody has got questions on what we've discussed so far.
Jeff, I'll check for you.
Yes,
you can continue while I'll check and call your attention to it.
Okay. All right, so let's look at practices and habits of academic high achievers. Some of the practices, some of the things you need to do, or those that have been through this, some of the things they do in order to get the kind of results you're looking for. The first one is what I call strategic planning.
Okay, JP.
Yep.
So there's a question, a quick one. He said, during your studies, did you work and study? And for those who are working and studying and want to come out with great grades, what would you say to them?
Okay. So during my undergraduate program, I wasn't working during the sections, during academic section, but during break, I worked. I remember because also I didn't come from a very rich family, so I supported myself a lot during school. One of the things, the kind of work I did, I remember one of the things I did during my undergrad is I go to a bar, I buy textbooks in Area. I come to the university and sell it, and I sell those textbooks during. But that's what the highest I did during when the academic section is on, But when I did work, I remember during Nuka Games, the last. I don't know if UNN has hosted the Nuka game again, but sometime around 28 or 29 when UNN hosted Nuka games, I stayed back in school during break, and I was among those who constructed all those things around the stadium. So I worked during break, in order to help earn some money that helped me during the semester. But during academic sections, I focused more on my academics. And again, I know that my situation might not work because there are people that need to work while studying. I know of a particular lecturer that was working while he was a student. I think he was doing some part-time work with Nigerian breweries in Enugu. And he also ended up finishing with a first class. But I think it all boils down to time management. I think one of our subsequent sections will focus purely on time management, because that is what will address that particular point, and we'll probably in those sections we will bring people with such experiences who were working while studying and how they were able to manage their time and still come out with the kind of results that we all desire, But that one boils down to time management. Yeah.
Okay, Jeffy, while your undergraduate may not fit perfectly, would you want to answer using your postgraduate, master's, and PhD in the UK, where you almost necessarily have to work to survive?
Of course, again, that's okay. Yeah, my mind has been at the Nigerian context. While I was doing my program in the UK, both at master's level and at PhD, of course, I was working. After the lectures, I know I need to rest. I go back to sleep. So it's more about cutting off unnecessary. See, when you're working and studying, you need to be very strict with defining what you want, because there will definitely be distractions. I will give you a personal example. When I was doing my master's in the UK, my very good friend, my best friend, is from a very rich family. He sometimes he will even pay for flight tickets. Again, that was in 2015, 2016, when UK was still part of EU. So you don't need a ticket to go to other European countries. He will even buy flight ticket for me for us to go to Paris some weekends and party and then come back during the week. We'll go on Friday and come back either on Sunday. I did that once. I did that twice, and then subsequently when he makes me those offer, it looks very good. I mean, I'm not even spending anything, but I understand that guy. If I keep following this guy, we are not the same. Yeah, we are studying, because I think in my class it was myself in my set, my master set. It was myself, this guy I'm talking about, and one British lady that finished with a distinction. I think just three of us. So he's also very good academically. So that's not to say he's very sound academically, But because of the kind of family where he doesn't need to work. As a matter of fact, we are both on Commonwealth Scholarship. While I was sending money that I was working, the stipend Commonwealth was paying me, and some of the money I earned from my work, I was sending it back home to Nigeria to support my family and do stuff. His father was sending him money from Ghana. So he was earning money from Ghana. So the idea is he doesn't even rely on what we earn. So understanding yourself, understanding your peculiarity, will make you to cut off some distractions. So when I was doing my master's, it was very clear to me that I had two agenda, because coming to UK to do masters is not just to study. I also need to make money because I have family back home to support. So 2 point agenda for me, it was very clear: my academics and work. I didn't really have a social life while I was doing my master's. It was very clear to me at that point that if I want to make a good result, you can still accommodate social life if you are fine with making any kind of, because I know I want to build a career in academics, right? And I need a very good result in order to get another scholarship for master's, for PhD. So I was able to cut off those distractions and focus only on my academics, go to class, come back, study, go to work. So my life was revolving around work, class, study, work, class, study. It became very clear that this is what I need. Of course, at the end of my master's program, when I've already achieved the kind of result I need, I had space to now work and also had fun. So it's just about getting organized, understanding yourself, understanding the difference in your academic, your area of strength, and then being able to cut off distractions along the way. Yeah, so you can work effectively and still be able to study. You just need to know what you can carry and prioritize what is important. I think there was a point I was going to talk about it here. Yeah, but that's fine. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Any other
Okay,
question?
there's another question from somebody. He shares his experience, first of all, about being physically challenged,
Okay.
how being able to navigate, get into the labs, do different things. I mean, those sort of assess different, maybe whatever I'll call it. Yeah. So, but now he's asking, what would you then advise people who have that kind of situation? Yeah, physically challenged people.
So first of all, this is where systems are important. If you are studying in developed countries where equality rights are well established and implemented, you wouldn't really have much of this problem, because I teach in the UK here. I've taught masters and undergraduate students, and I know that it's, as a lecturer, you you are bound to make provisions for people that have not only physical challenges, even mental health challenges. You must make provisions for them. You must find a way to accommodate them. So if someone has indicated at the beginning of the section that they can't see very well, or they suffer from, is it this? I've taught a student before that has this dyslexia. I can't remember the full name, but what it means is that if they are reading something, the walls will be running, so they can't really concentrate. So the lecturer has to figure out, an alternative way to assess them, other than just giving them. So this is what happens in established and unorganized systems. Back home in Nigeria, where some of these systems are not really, this is where you will need to. One of the things I was going to talk about later in this presentation is understanding your lecturers, and understanding the system that operates in your department. This is where you will need to go close to your head of department and the lecturers for each module and let them know your challenges ahead, and of course, majority of them will be able to give you the needed support. But don't just put yourself on the same scale as every other student who doesn't have a challenge, because the lecturers will grade everybody. But if at the beginning of the section, you've identified, you've made it clear to the lecturer that, look, the lecturer will, of course, unless in unfortunate situations where the lecturer doesn't really know what he's doing. But a very good lecturer should be able to make provisions for that. Another thing you can leverage on is friends. If you have friends who understand your challenges, they'll be able to stand in for you where you need help, throughout your academic career. Yeah. So this is what I can say for now on this.
Okay, JP, we have 20 minutes to go. Are we able to?
Yeah, we can round off in 20 minutes. Yeah. But any other question at the moment?
None yet. But if there's anybody with question, drop it in the chat box. I will attend to it.
Okay, so I will run through some of these habits. And one of the things I'm promising also is this is a series. So this is an introductory section on academic reading. So some of these things I'm talking about, I'm not going in depth in them, but in subsequent series, we will take some of these habits and just focus on them and go more in depth and discuss them. So one of the practices and habits of academic high achievers is they plan strategically. And I will use myself as an example. Like I said, the method might vary, but the principle remains the same. During my undergraduate and master's program, of course, PhD is a little bit different because it's purely research, But during all the coursework that I did, for all the modules I took, starting from my second year in the university during my undergraduate program, I had 2 notebooks for every subject. The notebook I always used to take notes in the class, and then my private summarized notebook for every subject. So what I do is, at the end of every class, I take the notebook, the recommended textbook that the lecturer has, the recommended textbook for that particular module, and I go home, and then I make my own notes from that textbook, from the notes I took in the class, and then of course I don't joke with past questions where available. And so I answer questions. So that's my own review. I have a review for all the modules. So during the exam, while every person is reading their notebook in class or the textbooks that is recommended, what I am reading is my summary. So that my summarized notes is personal to me. I don't share it. I don't bring it out. It doesn't come to class. It stays in my room. When I graduated, I had a lump of it, so I took it home. I think I still have them in my house in the village, So I have that. So this for me is one way I strategically plan for every module. I summarize solve every question. Of course, when you are in class, you'll be able to pinpoint the area that lecturers might likely ask questions, and then you focus more attention on those areas, summarize those areas, expand on them, look at the type of question. One of the things I did during my undergraduate course, and I did it with my group of students that we studied together, there are particular modules where we were able to forecast over 90% of the questions that will come out in exam. And one way through which we did this is we do strategic planning. We review all previous past questions. We go to the textbooks. Of course, and most lecturers are also, many lecturers are lazy, to be very honest. There are lecturers today that repeat questions. especially some of these old professors that are chasing grants, they don't have time to start repeating questions. So if you come across past questions, you can, and then you listen to them in class, you will likely know the kind of questions they will set. So another way of doing strategic planning is map all deadlines. Know the deadlines for each one to submit every assignment. Know the coursework that have heavy workload. There are coursework that requires little time. There are those that require less time. So be strategic and know what each course requires. Then the next thing that high achievers do is what we call deep work, and I do it till date. Most of the work I do at the moment is research work. I go to field, I come back, and then I do analysis and I write. Of course, at the moment, I have family. My kids are still very small, so I devote more attention to family. But I try to make out time for deep work. So deep work is that particular time where roughly between 60 to 90 minutes, where you set out a clear thing that you want to do. So say today, what I wanted to do today was watch Chelsea match just before this this webinar. But just before the Chelsea match, I needed to prepare this slide for this presentation, and I just made out about 2 hours. I need about 2 hours to put my ideas and thoughts together. So that's 60 to 90 minutes. I was without my phone. I kept my phone aside, distraction free. I make sure that the kids are far away from me. So people who achieve high academic excellence will always practice deep work. Make sure that there is a particular time, 60 to 90 minutes, or every day, consistency, where you focus on whatever you want to achieve without distractions. And then deep work, and it's not just about I'm going to read. It's for every deep work, you must set out what you want to achieve. So I want to solve all the past questions from this particular chapter. That is what you want to achieve during that deep work. I want to summarize this chapter and understand what this chapter is talking about. That is the practice of deep work. So for every deep work, you must set out, okay, this is what I'm going to achieve at the beginning. As a researcher, maybe I need to read some scientific papers. Okay, I need to read 3 scientific papers in this deep work in order to, give me an idea of what the literature is saying. So that understanding and that practice is very important. Next is high academic achievers practice what we call accelerated learning. I practiced this a lot when I was undergraduate and at my master's level. And it's simply the practice of teaching what you've learned. I always tell people, you've not really mastered a subject if you're not able to teach it to another person. And for some of my students, both from Soka, some of the people I've mentored here, I started teaching. I told you guys that I picked up some of these ideas and I started practicing them from my second year. From my second year in undergraduate, I was doing tutorial until I graduated. As a matter of fact, those who know me in Soka then, there was no course, especially course modules or subjects that requires calculation or that requires an extra hand. I always organize tutorials for all of them. It's free tutorial. Of course, there are people that do tutorials and people pay them. I did tutorials on chemistry. I did tutorials depending on computer. I remember when we did computer science, all those coding and all those things. Once I grab the idea, the next thing I do is I look for who to teach. Because once it's in the process of teaching others that you make it your own. You understand the areas where you need to improve more. And then you internalize it. So once I'm not able to teach somebody something, then I have not really understood it. And one thing you can do in accelerated learning, if you don't have the opportunity to teach an entire class, or you can have a reading group, few friends where you gather together and then you guys can discuss a particular subject before the exams, So try and always make sure that whatever you learn, whatever you think you understand, try and see if you can teach someone else. Once you are able to do that, then you can say you're already on the right path. The next point is what we call the principle of innovation and reapplication. It's simply the principle of past questions. I think I'll be mentioning it here. Using past questions where available was one of the things that high academic achievers will always do, because it's just like learning from those that have done it before. This principle does not mean that you rely solely on past questions. No, they go hand in hand with your textbooks, your notebooks, and of course, attending lectures. The next thing that they do is they practice they practice good time management. High academic achievers are highly organized people. You need to get organized. You need to know when to attend lectures. You need to know what to do. One of the things I practiced during my undergraduate, and it's a principle that cuts across every. I will never go back home. I was staying in off campus in Nsukka. I never if I attend the class, because I mentioned it, I am not a very intelligent person. This I know. So there are times I will be in a class. When they teach something, there are people that will grab it immediately. There are certain things they teach in a class, and I will not understand it at that point the lecturer was talking about it. But one of the things I always do is I make sure that I will not go back home until I understand it. So what do I do? It's also in this process of understanding resources and people that will help you achieve your goal. Once a lecture is finished and I understand that, guy, there's this point I'm missing, I don't understand. I know one or two people in the class that grabbed it. I'll quickly go to them and ask them. It probably wouldn't even take you 10 minutes and they will run you through it. Once I grab it, I just scramble it on my notes and then go home and internalize it. So get organized. Also use the cushion principle. The cushion principle simply says, I'll paraphrase it, but it's all about setting a personal deadline before the general deadline. So let's say an assignment is given in a class and the deadline to submit it is 27th of February. My personal deadline for that assignment will probably be a week before 27th. And I mean it. In my subconscious, the deadline for that assignment will probably be around 20th of February. I will finish it around 20th of February. And that gives me enough time, because I'm someone who doesn't like working under pressure. So using the cushion principle, I always set a personal deadline before the general deadline, and I use it to achieve what I want. And of course, to-do list, key. I don't joke with to-do lists because there are so many things, especially when you have so many things calling for your attention. You need to get organized, have a to-do list, and know the things you need to do at the beginning of the day and when you need to do it. Then the last thing that we do is leverage on people, things, and money. See, listen, you don't have all the time in the world to do everything yourself. I always tell people this whole game changer program that we're doing is the brainchild of my friend Cornell. And of course I've lived with Cornell. And one thing I understand from him, he knows how to leverage on people. He knows those that will be able to give him the kind of things, the result he needs, and he simply approaches them. So as a student, always know that there are things you can't do yourself. There are certain things, if you know, and if there's an assignment that requires you to learn from someone, it doesn't mean copying from that. I'm not talking about examination malpractice, but you know that if you go to this person, this person will be able to help you do it quite fast. Why not leverage on that person? If there are things you need to pay for with money in order to get a faster result, and you have the money, simply leverage on the money you have and get it done. Because you don't have time to do. There are certain things I don't have time to do again. If once I have the money, I pay for it and get it done. The most important thing is that you understand what is being done. So try to leverage on people, leverage on things around you, in order to get things done. And then I think I'm rounding up. I basically put this section because I know that one of the things that students have challenging is how to read and how to memorize. And from my personal experience, I found out that the one best way to memorize or to write, and this is some of the habits of highly effective students, is when I write, I vocalize it. I even till today, as a scientist, when I write academic, of course, there are people that type their ideas directly on computer. I still practice using, if you come to my room, you always see sheet of paper. I still practice the idea of, and this is one way I've never been found, this idea of plagiarism, especially for those of you that are planning to study abroad, where your essays will pass through plagiarism test and all that. Yeah, that has never been a problem for me because naturally the way I write is I first of all use pen to put my ideas first. Let the idea be original, Then you can of course go to the internet to fine-tune it and to make it more appealing, So one way to memorize is to repeatedly write things as you vocalize them. In that way, you are learning in a multi-sensory way. Your hand is busy, your eyes is busy, your ears are there, your mouth is also working, and all these things come together to create an image of that subject in your brain. And that is, for me, that is the easiest way to memorize things. How do you increase concentration as a student? One of the things I do is, whenever I study, I take regular break. You will never catch me sitting in one place for more than 2 hours. After about 1 hour 30 minutes, I stand up to go and do one of the things that will distract my attention, and then I come back. I don't force myself into long learning sections, because studies have shown that ability to remember things drop as learning. It's just like this webinar. If this webinar takes more than 2 hours, some of you will begin to feel bored, and some of the things I'm talking about will make sense. That's why I don't like 2 hours lecture. Most times, if I'm designing a module, I always try to make sure that the lectures are 1 hour, at most 1 hour 30 minutes, because after that, people begin to get bored. So again, one of the things I do in order to increase concentration, this is personal to me, is I read in a cool and quiet environment. There are people that claim that they can read in noisy environment. Well, that's not me, but know what works for you, and really ask yourself, can you really concentrate when there is noise around you? So these are some of the practices you need to do in order to increase concentration. And I just put this law of substitution here that says the conscious mind can only process one information at a time. So it means it boils down to what I said earlier about getting organized. Having a to-do list and setting a goal, doing one thing at a particular time. You will never find me going to read during my undergraduate days with two different subjects. If I'm going to read, I know that it is this course it is this topic I'm going to address, so that my mind will be fully focused on it. Now, the last thing I need to talk about is, because this takes me back to what I said at the beginning about the academic system, is understanding your lecturer, or the relationship or the perception of the lecturer and you. How your lecturer perceives you goes a long way in determining what you get from them. As a matter of fact, your academic result is simply your lecturer's perception of who they think you are. And I'm very careful to use the word who they think you are, because they may be wrong. I'm a lecturer myself. But whatever grade you are getting, or whatever grade you're coming out from the university, is simply what the lecturer perceives you to be. So there are two ways to manage your relationship with lecturers. First is to understand that just lecturers are part of this university system, so they have standards. So what it means is pay attention to what they want, and whatever they want, to give it to them. There are lecturers that when they ask you a question in exam, what is this? They expect you to just give them the direct answer. There are lecturers like myself that will expect you to go beyond giving me the direct answer. I want you to expand it. I want you to give me practical examples. I want you to show that you really understand the concept. So understand what each lecturer wants. And this is my little observation, and it doesn't have to work. It doesn't work across all lecturers. Most older lecturers, especially these professors, there's a level you get to, you become busy. You're busy with chasing grants and all that. Most of them are just fine with giving them the example, the question. When they ask you what is this, just give them the answer and they are fine with it. But most younger lecturers, of course, the blood is still hot. They want you to go more. So the key thing here is understand your lecturer. Understand the standard of each lecturer. It varies from one lecturer to another. Understand what that lecturer wants and give it back to them. Secondly, your lecturer will help you to excel. And I'm saying this from the position of once a student and now a lecturer. Your lecturer will help you to excel if they perceive you desire to excel. And I always give you this advice. Never allow your lecturer to perceive you as an unserious student, or even perceive your class as an unserious class, because it will affect how the kind of grade. Have you not encountered lecturers? And because my friend, during our undergraduate days, so in my department we are three that made first class, and the second person, there was a course he took in either third or fourth year, and he got F. I think that should be in fourth year. He got F. And then he went to another lecturer that is a bit close to him and said, look, this is my fourth year. I've never even had a D before. So how come I got F in this module? And the lecturer said, no, you're a very serious student. You can't have an F. The lecturer took it up himself. They went to that sister department where that module was, and then his script has to be remarked. And of course, at the end, he scored an A. The only reason he was able to go that way was because the lecturers in his department have a good perception of him as a good student, as a serious student. If your lecturers perceive you as an unserious student, if you've been banging F and D's and C's and you are coming to complain, their motivation won't be there for anybody to go extra mile, because that's the kind of results you've been producing. That's the perception we have about you as lecturer, the lecturer-student perception. There's this thing that happened, and I'll conclude with this story. I attended a seminary school in my undergraduate, in my secondary school, and from JSS1 to JSS, there is this system they apply. After first term exam, the class is divided into JSS1A, 1B, and 1C. So those after first term result, when the first term result is out, those that score from 1 to 50 are that's what you graduate with. What's it called again in secondary school? Your first term results, first position to 50th position are in class A. That's the class perceived as intelligent students. Of not just perceived, that's what their result is. And then from 50 to 100, I remember in my first year, in my JSS1, we are 150. So 100 to 1 to 50, class 1A, 51 to 100, class 1B, and 101 to 150, class 1C. Because I didn't have a good primary school background, after first term, of course, I don't forget I scored 135 out of 150. So of course, naturally, I found myself in class 1C. So I was in class 1C throughout my JSS1. It was when I came, I don't know, there's always something about my life and second year. I always pick up from the second point. When we entered JSS2, I jumped from class C to class A. And one thing I understand, and this was what I knew as a little boy then, was the way teachers relate with students in class 1A is the difference is so wide from how they relate with those in class 1C. Even those in class 1A, when they make a mistake, the lecturers or the teachers will make it up for them and say, oh yes, I understand what you're trying to say. But even when you are making sense in class 1C, they already see you as Olodo. So always try to make sure that the lecturers perceive you as a serious and hardworking student. What this means is that even when you have challenges, you will be able. There's enough. You have enough leverage. In order to address that problem. So how your lecturers perceive you is very, very important. And I think this is where we'll be ending today. The last thing I will talk about, maybe because time will not permit us, is the things you need to track. You need to track your assignment grade. You need to track the number of hours you spend for each module. You need to track how you master each particular module at every level. You need to track your submission timelines using the cushion principle that I mentioned earlier. So these are some of the things you need to track. But again, in subsequent sections, we'll be able to go more in depth into some of these issues that we've raised. I think this is where we'll call it a day for today. And then I would like to take your questions. And like I said, there are one or two people I invited here. I mean, they also finished with first class and they are doing marvelously well in the academics at the moment. Some of the things we'll talk about, what are your perspectives? What do you think about these issues? And I will leave the floor open for anybody to either ask question or to give us your own perspective on some of the issues we've been talking about.